I'm Kevin Rinke, and I'd like to welcome you to Beyond the Echo. I ran for governor in Michigan. After losing that election, my desire to look at issues that are important to the state or the country grew. There is so much static. There are so many opinions. Our news stations have gotten to the point where we don't know what news is anymore. Where do you go to get real facts? This is about real perspective for you. Beyond the Echo will cut through all the smoke, all the opinions. It's not about Republicans. It's not about Democrats. It's about the issues and what are real. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Echo. And it's my privilege and pleasure this morning to have Christina Barr, a very special guest, someone who I am just getting to know, and think that there's value in you getting to hear Christina's story. And so, Christina, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
You bet. Thanks for coming up this morning. Our studio is in Owasso, Michigan, by the way. And I was saying to Christina that I don't think Joe Rogan's got anything on our place here. It looks pretty cool.
It is a cool place. It is a cool place.
Lots of fun. So, Christina, you're a 35-year-old conservative young Black woman. And I'm fascinated by different groups, people different in essence than me, because I'm supposedly the rigid, rich white guy.
Full of privilege and all that stuff.
Full of privilege. I'm a racist. I'm a bigot. I'm all of these things, or I'm accused of being all of these things. And that's not how I see America. That's not how I see Michigan. I know that's not who I am, but I think that being able to talk to someone like yourself who is different in your background than mine, but we share the same goals in many ways for the citizens of Michigan, for our state, and for our country. So if you would, talk a little bit about your upbringing.
Well, I come from a history of church. My dad was the pastor of our church growing up. He gave it over to my brother, so he's the current pastor of our church in Rochester Hills. And my family at first didn't really know that they were Republican and conservative. It used to be that, African Americans, they had a history of being Republican because, Republicans were the ones who fought to end slavery and all that. And then through the years, it started to change. And so by the time, he was a kid, Democrat was just kind of what people had shifted to. And so, but he was always very religious, obviously. And so when my eldest sister, when she was going to school at Pontiac Central, she had a teacher that to put a test like on the board and stuff. And he said, okay, we're going to determine where you kind of align. And this is in Pontiac Central, very diverse, but a lot of African Americans there. And so after people took the test, most people kind of found out that they were conservative and that they leaned Republican. And so my sister was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually Republican. So she went home and she's like, Dad, I'm conservative, I'm a Republican. He's like, what? And she's like, Dad, you're a Republican too.
But, I think it's kind of interesting because I don't understand why people want to, for lack of a better term, brand themselves. Mm-hmm. I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, because what I believe in is when you identify with maybe what one party stands for, that it is more common sense, that it is actually more equal and fair than what people realize. And there's a few minor issues that separate us, and people feel very, very strongly about those issues, as they should, as they're entitled to. But when you take off a title and you say, do you believe in faith, family, community? I've never heard anybody out there that says families stink. We should tear them apart. I've never heard anybody out there say communities suck. We should tear them apart. And I've never heard anybody really say that faith, whatever your faith is wrong or bad, because we all need to believe in something. And isn't that an element of faith, do you think?
Well, I think everyone is searching to fulfill a God-sized hole in their hearts. So I think everyone, one way or another, whether they choose to believe in God, believe in something.
And see, for me, that's faith. I believe in God, but the essence of it is I don't say I have faith because I believe in God. I believe that as people search that component of hope and something to aspire to or something to aspire for are all key elements of faith.
Well, I think, the Bible talks about how, the laws are written on our hearts. So I think deep down, everyone knows what's right and what's wrong. But I don't think everyone kind of, like you're saying, that everybody shares a lot of the same values. And I think for the most part, that's true, but we don't all know how to achieve certain goals, and people go about different ways to get there.
Absolutely.
So, when people identify with Republican or Democrat, there's different policy prescriptions that either party adheres to. And so I encourage people to go look at the different platforms and actually see where you align. There's a lot of people who don't identify and say that they're politically homeless, and that's absolutely fine. But, I identify with the policies mostly in the Republican Party platform. I preferred it back in 2016. There's some changes I'm not too fond of right now, but, but I mostly, lean with the Republican Party and have for a while. But as far as, conservative and liberal and progressive, you get into some more value differences along those particular lines. So my dad was always conservative. He just didn't realize that he needed to go ahead and make that leap. And I don't really remember him not being Republican. I remember listening to Rush Limbaugh in the car,
right?
Kind of being a
I
Rush
miss Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah,
the guy was brilliant. He was so far above what we have today as far as his approach and his demeanor and his message. I was enamored with Rush, and I turn off a lot of today's pundits. But I want to go back to something that you said, liberal, conservative, or progressive. And I think it's really interesting that people are trying to push this third party into the equation because it doesn't exist. In America, and I'm happy for it, we have two parties. And forced choice, when you say, what do you align with, I think is really good because it requires people to understand what they're aligning with. So I don't pay the progressives as much as they're trying to demand attention. I listen to what they say, but for them to have a voice, it's either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And I never want to see us leave a two-party system. There's strength in that uniqueness in America.
Well, the progressives, some people call them regressive, really, but they are really cannibalizing a lot of the Democrat Party. After this airs, we will know the result of the election and stuff. But right now, Kamala Harris is. How
do you pronounce it? Kamala?
It's comma. You got to think of a comma. If I say your name wrong, I never do it on purpose. But I thought it was.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one that is mispronounced her name because I say it different almost every time.
Yeah, so I'm really not trying to, but I just thought it was pronounced differently for a long time. So I'm just kind of accustomed saying it a particular way. But she was, left of Bernie Sanders when she was in the Senate, and that hasn't really changed. And so you see a lot of voices like AOC who really is energized. And I think a lot of people who've been there for a long time, they see this energy behind a lot of really loud, young people in the Democrat Party, and they want.
Aren't those traditionally further left?
Yeah. They're really, really far left. Go back and listen to even Obama when he ran, or Clinton when he ran, or
well, Bill Clinton would be a Republican in today's world.
Probably. I used to work for the Michigan Republican Party, and I was the creative director, so I did all their graphics and their videos and stuff like that. But we were watching when the debates in like 2015 when they first started, and so Democrats had a lot of people running at first, and back in 2015, and so Jim Webb was interesting. He left like right after that debate because he just kind of saw that the party wasn't with him anymore. But they asked a question like, who's your greatest enemy? And they were saying like the NRA, they were saying big oil. Hillary Clinton named a couple people, but she said the Republicans were her greatest enemy, which I thought to be abhorrent. I'm like, that's, like half the country. You were, first lady of the United States of America.
She's willing to alienate 50% of the country every chance she gets.
Yeah, she is. And Jim Webb, he was like, well, it was probably that guy who threw a grenade at me, but he didn't live to tell the tale. And so the audience was just like flat when he said it. But we at the Michigan Republican Party were like, that's amazing. That's an amazing answer. And it just didn't land with them at all. And so he just kind of realized that he was a little too moderate for his party, and he dropped out of the race.
Well, Ronald Reagan was an interesting guy because he was a Democrat. He was a union leader. He was an actor. He was a liberal who suddenly migrated as he saw the left start to attack really the foundations of what America stood for. And, he described it that he wanted to get back to that shining city on a hill. Yeah. And I think that's for everybody. And one of his great lines was, we agree on 80%. And so you're an 80% friend, and that's every American, not a 20% enemy. And where we're at today, people walk around angry and they're 20% enemies. And there are things that can move our country forward that we should all agree on.
Yeah.
Immigration shouldn't be a fight. And by the way, both parties have stepped on it. I mean, in a big pile of dung when it comes to immigration. We're a country of immigrants, for God's sakes. We need to protect our borders. We need to have a process that doesn't take 10, 12, 15, 20 years for people to legally follow.
When I went to the Philippines when I was in the 10th grade, and it was really dangerous at the time, actually, but the State Department warned not to go. And there was a couple of terrorist attacks that happened around that time, including Christians being kidnapped and stuff. So my dad, it was me and my 3 older siblings who went with him, and he showed us like the report, and we prayed about it. Like, we feel that, it's okay to go. So between God, the idea in my head that, my dad would go Rambo, something happened to me, and confidence in the United States of America at the time, that if something happened, that they would do everything to get us back home. We're like, let's go. Plus, there's a layover in Japan, and I was really big into anime and all kinds of different stuff. So I really wanted to go to Japan for like 2 seconds.
Even though you saw it all in the airport, right?
Yeah. They almost had to do something with their flight, so we would have to stay overnight, but they ended up like figuring it out. So I was pretty sad. But we realized that there was a guy who kept kind of showing up, asking questions, and knew a lot about American culture and stuff. We thought it was a little strange, but we ended up finding out that he was assigned to us by the State Department to follow us with a satellite phone in case we were kidnapped. And so, but he wanted to one day be able to come to America. And sometimes you have citizens who will, cooperate with the United States in that kind of way because they, want to get that extra pat on the wrist, to be like, hey, you can come in here. But there's so many people who wanted to come to the U.S. and were working hard to come to the U.S. So, I mean, when I see all these people kind of flooding the border and stuff, I always kind of think about people who, as you said, have to wait a long time and wait in line and do the right thing. So,
well, I don't understand if we elect people, be it Republican or Democrat, why they can't agree on that. And by the way, it's not just agreeing on immigration. I happen to believe in each bill should be a single issue bill.
Yeah.
And that cuts all the bullshit. Excuse my French, bullshit out of the politics of it, because you've got an immigration bill that talks about, solar panels on page 9,344. And our political leaders don't even bother to read the bills because they're so big and they get dropped on them at the last second.
Or they name bills that have nothing to do with it, like the Inflation Reduction Act, which Joe Biden admitted was basically a Green New Deal policy bill. And he said, I don't know if he slipped up or what, but he said we should have, called it what it was.
Well, even the immigration bill that the Democrats tout and say, oh, Donald Trump stepped in the way of, wasn't just about immigration.
Yeah.
There were so many other elements in that were political issues that had been unsuccessful that got tie-barred to those bills. And I think that the American people don't understand that, and that hurts our process. And of course, the news media loves to pick sides.
But I don't understand why the rebuttal to that isn't, hey, the House already passed an immigration bill, and Chuck Schumer and them, they don't want to bring it up. Then they don't want to bring it up because they feel that it's too strict. So they already got one through there.
That's part of politics. And by the way, you don't hear Republicans bringing it up saying, we've got an immigration bill.
That's what I'm saying. I'm kind of puzzled by,
they love to play
there's
the
a
game.
Talking point right there. Yeah. I'm like, who's sending out your talking points?
I talk a lot about qualified people being in politics. And I've spent time in Lansing and I've spent time in Washington, D.C., and there are a lot of really good people. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of unqualified, really good people. There's some qualified people, but there's a lot of unqualified people in Lansing that don't get it, that are going to vote Republican no matter what the issue is, even if it's wrong or bad, or vote Democrat no matter what the issue is, even if it's wrong or bad. And that's because their ability to comprehend and understand the role and the responsibility that they have is limited to their experience. And a lot of them are there, candidly, because it pays well.
Yeah.
A lot of them are there because they think that makes them important and powerful. And that's not how our government was set up.
Sometimes people ask me about, I have run for office in the past, but
two times, right?
Yeah. Well, I was 2 times in the same year, actually.
Okay.
Because I ran for a state rep and I lost my primary by 6 votes.
Yikes.
So yikes. And then
did you demand a recount? Did you want the state
I wanted to let it go, but my dad wanted to do a recount, and I'm like, he's like, I'll pay for it. I love you, Christine. I'm like, I'm good. I'm okay. But he's like, let's do it. And so we did a recount, and we didn't do it for the whole area, whatever. We just picked a couple of different precincts and stuff, but we didn't find enough to change the outcome, which was fine. And but then I got the 14th district, which doesn't exist anymore. They voted, Christina Conyers was running for Congress, and so she had dropped out, so they needed someone else to run.
Is that Brenda Lawrence's seat?
Yeah, Brenda. Yeah, I ran against Brenda Lawrence.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
That would be a tough campaign.
Yeah, but I only had a month to run it too. But so the 14th district voted me in. Long story short. And the person who beat me in the primary, he actually had another candidate that he recommended to the panel. But then I had to work that day, so I couldn't even be there for my big speech. But I wrote a letter, and my sister read it, and she spoke up for me. And I was at Micro Center slinging computers, and then I saw Jim Tino walk in, and he's like, "It's you. You're the person running for Congress." And so I only had a month, and it's an 80-20 district, but
right.
Brenda, when she won the primary, she was done. There was a debate that we were supposed to have that was hosted by the League of Women's Voters, which is, left leaning or whatever. And she didn't even show up. So we didn't end up having the debate. And
isn't that interesting that education and exposure to both sides? It's okay that the League of Women Voters leans left. It doesn't mean a Republican shouldn't sit down and answer questions, honestly.
They were upset that she didn't show up because I guess in the primary, they were like, oh, she was on them all the time, wanting exposure and coverage and all kinds of different stuff. But as soon as she won it, she knew she didn't have to do anything because it's an 80-20 district.
Well, that's indicative of so many elected officials. They're really interested in getting exposure when they're running.
Yeah.
And then they get short memories.
Yeah.
Real quick, and they go back to doing whatever it is they feel like doing and don't think that there's any accountability. And, we see that in Michigan, we see it in Washington, we see it across the country. We actually see it in other countries. And it's part of why in today's world with technology and instant access to so many things that people are so disgruntled.
Yeah.
They don't understand and they don't necessarily accept it. And how do they get a voice? Because if you question the integrity of an election, do you really have a voice? I happen to believe that you do, and that voting is the greatest privilege that an American has.
Yeah.
And there's a responsibility with that privilege.
You know what really bothers me about the questioning of, the elections and other stuff like that? In 2022, in the midterm, CNN ran an article about here's all the election deniers who are running for office. And they had people like Ron DeSantis on there, like Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump and their rhetoric about the election. It's not the same. People had different questions about different things. But if you question it all, basically you made the list. But I noticed they only basically had Republicans who were qualified as election deniers because they were only thinking about 2020. But I'm like, what about all the people who said that Trump was illegitimate when he won in 2016.
That'd be Hillary Clinton and her crew.
Yeah, her crew.
They were
but I don't know
deniers.
if you had to participate or do anything in the recount in 2016, but I had to work that. And so I'm so annoyed. I'm like, why are we all goldfishes and we can't remember what happened? Because that was supposed to be my time off. Election won. Worked hard. I didn't get to do as many fun things as other people on the campaigns because I was behind a computer making video after video after video, So my sister's like, oh, we got to meet Don Jr. in the Detroit office. I'm like, I'm in Lansing behind a computer, So finally time off, supposed to relax for the holidays. And they're like, hey, they're challenging the election. We need a video real fast and this and that. And so we had to go around the state, arrange people to be able to, count the ballots and other kind of stuff.
Sure.
And all the Trump people were basically like, oh, we got to save democracy. We're going to watch them count each one. And the Jill Stein Hillary people are just kind of like, oh, I'm here. It's so nice. And I'm like, why are you even here? It doesn't even seem like you care that much. And it was a silly recount and it ended up getting stopped. But I didn't forget. They questioned the outcome of the election. They wanted to change the outcome of the election. I was almost an elector, but it was a kind of a miscalculation. So I didn't end up getting the necessary votes. So, but a lot of people that I knew were electors that year, and they were flooded. In hindsight, I'm kind of glad because probably would have freaked my sister out getting all those letters sent to my house, begging people begging you to change your vote. And Michael Benarian, he got threats.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, you all question in the results of the election. And not only that, you wanted to go through a legal process to change the outcome of the election with the electors.
Of course they did. And the hypocrisy of each situation. I like fair and balanced. Mm-hmm. One thing that's going to happen in every election? Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose.
Yeah.
And you know what I care about is exercising my right. And I care about the integrity that people who can vote do vote. That people who can't vote are stopped from voting. We've got a very unique situation here in Michigan that just came out yesterday about a Chinese national student at the University of Michigan who took advantage of a new law that was passed in 2022 that you can register and vote on the same day without anybody checking your legitimacy. And I'm going to applaud state government. They are pursuing this person and pressing charges against this person. But
it's going to be counted.
Here's the thing that I don't get. That same state government says, we're going to prosecute this person for breaking the law, But even though we know that that vote was illegal, the vote counts. That's a lack of common sense. That shows that a law that was intended to create more integrity and transparency wasn't well written, that it had a twist to it. And I think that's another thing that frustrates people.
I don't know if it was written for more integrity, like people to be able to do it all in the same day and stuff. I don't know about that, but
well, you're going where I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I happen to believe that we should have voter ID. You know, you need ID to get on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
You need ID to get a drink. You need ID to purchase certain products that are available in our country.
You show ID at Republican and Democrat conventions when you want your credentials.
Absolutely, you do.
I've had to work those tables.
No question. And yet, when it comes to the greatest privilege that a citizen, not a non-citizen, not a visitor, not an illegal alien, and they are illegal aliens. They are not immigrants who, just have assimilated into society. Why the hell shouldn't they have to show a valid ID? Why did we stop cleaning up voter rolls that eliminated dead people? And I got a lot of heat for my "Why Do Dead People Vote" commercial when I was running for governor. It was a parody. It wasn't actually about dead people voting, but it's a loophole.
Yeah.
And we know that some people who have ill intent are going to take advantage of that loophole. Yesterday, there was another story that was broken, and very, very interesting, because there are files that the Secretary of State keeps in Michigan, and there were 114,000 voters that had applied for 279,000 ballots. Okay. There was one guy on one day that applied for 10 ballots from 10 different addresses, and the system had never been upgraded. And I thought it was really interesting how the press reacted to it, because I brought it up as a competency issue. Some people brought it up as a voter fraud issue. And these people didn't vote. Was their intent to vote 10 times?
Yeah.
The system actually identified them. But my question is for Jocelyn Benson and for people above me in that area, why did it take 140,000 bad hits in an outside monitoring group that I happen to be a part of to identify it? And instantly I went to the press on, this is an accountability issue. This is a competency issue, not voter fraud. And you know what happened? The Secretary of State came out last night and said, well, there's a glitch in our computer system. And they guaranteed that it would be fixed today. We're going to run those reports again today and see.
Well, good for you.
Accountability versus emotion, though, is where I'm going to.
Yeah.
I can't deny an election without irrefutable facts. If my guy loses or my gal loses. And yet I do think that it's appropriate to look. Al Gore fought tooth and nail. And you know what? He lost on facts. Hillary Clinton lost on facts.
And then, continued the propaganda for a long time. But, I think what's so disturbing about the story that broke about the kid voting who wasn't legal, or non-citizen voting, rather, there's been such contention about this all over the country, particularly in Michigan. And Jocelyn Benson, I think she just said there aren't non-citizens voting not too long ago, as a fact, and it didn't age well, obviously. And it's her responsibility to make sure something like this doesn't happen. And it did. And like you said, good thing they're prosecuting him. I hope they do it.
The bad thing is, though, the vote counts.
But the vote counts.
Right.
And so that's the thing that everyone's like, that what we don't want to happen. That's our fear of something that has happened. And you're saying that there's no remedy for that. They're saying there's no way that we can undo that. So
that's my point.
Already people can be like, well, if they have an election result that they don't like, there's questions there already. We need to have faith in our institutions, and they're dropping the ball here.
There is no question. I agree with your statement. I'm about accountability. Okay. And if we're going to implement new laws, and by the way, we're talking about a law that was implemented in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was a ballot initiative. That's not in our Constitution.
Yeah, it's in the Constitution now. But who in their right mind would say, well, if we catch somebody cheating and voting multiple times, that we're going to prosecute them, but their vote gets to count? That's ludicrous, and that affects both Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
I wish that 100% of legal voters voted. I wish that, because I think it's a privilege. Now, there are those people that would say, well, you, because you're on the right, would lose because there's a greater percentage of people that identify with the Democrats. Maybe, maybe not.
I don't necessarily feel that way.
Yeah.
I just, I would like people who are informed. It's everybody's privilege. I'm saying it's not their privilege to vote. I would like people to be engaged.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah,
I think there's a responsibility.
I think there's a responsibility
to
to be informed. But well, interesting story. So I went undercover at a Democrat event one time a couple years ago, and Benson was there, Gretchen Whitmer was there, Dana Nessel was there and stuff. It was.
So did you dress up in a costume?
No, I didn't dress up in a costume. I guess I just showed up and was black, and they assumed, so didn't question me at all.
Wait, because you were black, they assumed.
I did show up at their, a Democrat Oakland County picnic. So,
Does that mean they would have thrown me out because I was a white male?
Well, I mean,
an angry white male.
There are plenty of white people there. So
I'm just kidding.
So, they were talking about like people registering to vote on the same day, and a lot of them were like kids and stuff. And I mean, I think it's adults, but younger than I am. But so, and they're happy about that and proud about that, and that's. I'm glad people are exercising their privilege to do that. But at the same time, I don't want people to just, election day, they're on colleges and they're wrangling kids. Like, we really need to do this. Like, but did you learn about this issue? Did you study this issue? Do you know anything about these people? So
see, I've always been responsible enough to say, if I don't understand the issue, I won't vote for it.
Yeah.
And, Christina, I totally agree. And what I'd like to see taught in our schools for those young people that certain parties love to target, because it sounds great what they say. You get free education, you get free food, you're going to get money for a business, and you're going to get this and you're going to get that, and we're going to punish the successful people. And you say, wow, when you're young and you're starting out, that sounds great. So I'm going to pull that lever. But they don't realize that makes them dependent on government. And my point is, I'd like to see in our schools civics classes that teach not only the importance of exercising your right to vote, but the responsibility associated with voting and the actual pride that you feel when you identify with an issue that's important to you and you understand it for what it is, and you have the right to cast your vote.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff. But if you're just some idiot that says, oh, I can vote and I'm going to pull a lever with no knowledge, well, then maybe you don't have a right to complain when you lose rights or when your government doesn't represent you the way you thought it would or should. And holding government accountable requires knowledge, not emotion.
It requires a responsible citizenry.
Yet First Amendment rights apply to everybody. Our Constitution applies to everybody. Our border applies to everybody. Men and women's sports potentially applies to everybody who either participates in a sport or has children.
Yeah.
And you know, some people say, oh, it's limited in the situations where this occurs. And, you know, we don't need to be talking about it. Well, you know what? If it's your daughter, then all of a sudden you want to talk about it. Or people say, you know, it's censorship not to allow certain types of books in libraries. Well,
let's look at the books we're talking about. That shouldn't be there.
If you are an adult and you want to read a lewd book, have at it. Mm-hmm. That's your right.
Yeah.
And I totally support that. It's not your right to give a lewd book or to provide access to a lewd book to a minor that wouldn't be provided by their parent. And that's not censorship.
Yeah, one book that they wanted in these schools and stuff, it's called This Book is Gay. It has some graphic images in there.
Oh, it's terrible.
But
I've looked at it.
Not just that, but you know, there's a page that talks about how you can go online and talk to other gay people. And there's even like a section in there on how to talk to Muslims about homosexuality, I guess, to overcome their objections. And I'm like, of course, the people of like Michigan who are Muslims and stuff are against all this stuff and teaming up with the Christians and saying, we don't want this stuff in our schools. So my sister works for the RNC, I guess technically for the campaign, Trump campaign, but she's head of like urban engagement stuff. So she talks about, she goes across the country, she's talked to men everywhere, and their issues are the economy, how they're going to put food on the table for their family, the border, because that affects safety, and how they're going to, you know, our economy as well. Sure. And they care about like the bathroom issue with because they don't want their daughters to go to bathroom and some, you know, dude who says he's a woman to go in there, or they don't want people competing against their daughters in sports. And so those are issues that are pretty important. That's why Trump aired that ad during football, and they're mad because it's effective. So to the point where Kamala Harris was kind of trying to soften her position on it, and point fingers like, well, Trump did this too. Yeah. So, you know, but there's just so many things that we're not talking about. Like, and I said, I haven't heard anybody really talking about this. So in 2000 and, might have been 8 or was it 5, but years ago, like during DC versus Heller, there was an amicus brief that Kamala Harris signed her name onto. And so they were trying to argue that citizens do not have a private right to own a firearm, that the right, you know, to bear arms is militia based, because DC was trying to ban firearms.
Absolutely.
So, so if that's her opinion, that you and I don't have a right to bear arms for private use, I don't understand why every Trump surrogate isn't talking about, and every journalist should be asking her, like, do you still believe this? And if you don't, are you glad that the conservative justices were able to stop you?
Well, again, it doesn't fit a narrative. And
oh no, she's saying, I don't want to take your guns. I own a Glock. You know, trying to get elected. Yeah, right. But you literally tried to take people. She literally did try to take guns. She supported Proposition H,
of course,
in San Francisco, to take away people's handguns, not assault weapons or whatever the heck that means, but handguns.
Kamala Harris is an extremist, and she believes that she is part of the elite and that the elite should control the masses. It's just that simple. Not that she represents the masses, that she should control the masses. Not that she should be responsive to the desires of the masses who are paying her way. But she's convinced herself that she's smarter than everyone else. And I find that comedic, because the word salad and the soup that comes out of her mouth is certainly not indicative of highly educated, in my view. She conveniently changes her position.
I think what's worse is when she just goes into AI bot mode. Like she was asked about Tim Walz comparing Trump's, you know, Madison Square rally to Nazis and stuff. And they're like,
That's disgusting, by the
it
way.
it is very disgusting. But she immediately goes into like, we're the ones trying to unify, and Donald Trump's always pointing fingers and such and such. I'm like, did you hear his question? He specifically said, Governor Walz said this terrible thing. Why aren't you responding to that?
Right.
It's just like AI response, like the, I was raised in a middle class family
And worked for McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well, I think that politics, and it's sad to me because this presidential election is going to, just the presidential election is going to cost $17 billion. And the good that we could do for the people of our country versus spending it on rotten ads and lies and twists and situational snippets. We shouldn't expect people to be perfect. Mm-hmm. But the role of leadership, the role of governance has gotten clouded over. And in my view, it's been clouded over in emotion. Mm-hmm. And I'm an emotional person, but I'm really more comfortable with facts. And, you know, there's right and wrong. I don't like gray in my life. Well, government likes to create gray because it broadens their appeal. And that's confusing to people versus reassuring. And Ronald Reagan, again, I talked about him earlier, you know, said we're 1 decade away from losing what America stands for. And I happen to believe that the left has targeted that 1 decade philosophy for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And back during the Kennedy administration, the Russians, you know, there's a very famous document from a high-ranking Russian official. He said, we're never going to have to beat America in a military conflict. We will beat them by inserting into society and destroying family, destroying faith, destroying community. We'll institute pornography. We'll institute, you know, non-traditional lifestyles, and the country will end up eating itself. And I hope they're not right, but it certainly has created a rift in our country and a separation. And we need to figure out how to focus on what unites us. Mm-hmm. Even when we disagree, we need to focus on the issues that we can agree on and move forward and figure out versus shouting, finger pointing, screaming, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, on both sides. Yeah. When the issues that we disagree on, we've got to be more creative than that.
When I went to that undercover event, you know, it was amazing to me. Like we all clearly cared about our families and communities, and you know, had shared interest and so on. And even like someone I was talking to who worked within, you know, the Democrat Party, they talked about how they wish they had more diversity. And she's like, you would think, you know, with all their talk, but she said it's you know, they talk about the Republicans all the time, white men, this, white men, that. But she said that's actually, you know, issue with the Democrat Party, that, you know, so, but one thing I found really disturbing is how they would talk and would demonize Republicans. And they would say, Donald Trump doesn't care about anyone but himself. I'm like, he doesn't care about his kids. He doesn't care about, you know, his friends. He obviously cares about people. But that's just how they felt about Republicans in general. Like when I would hear in passing,
that's emotion.
It is emotion, and it's
silly.
Presumptive, and it is silly, because I mean, they're having these fine conversations with me about things that I care about, things that I love. Yeah. And they don't know that I am a Republican. And even one of their justices was there, Bernstein. He said, you know, he loved being a Democrat because they care about people. And I thought that was so disgusting. I've been to a lot of events with, you know, conservative justices. I've never heard anyone say anything that negative about people on the other side of the aisle. And so that's what really, you know, disturbed me.
Caring is different than being bombastic, and Trump is bombastic.
He's done like so many charitable things for people that he's never even talked about.
Yeah, there's a difference between calling someone unqualified and dumb than calling them a fascist.
Fascist, yeah.
Yeah, fascist, thank you. And I had this conversation with somebody, and I said, God, it is below you. Even though we disagree, you have now stepped to a level that a pregnant ant could walk over. You are so low. And now it's becoming personal for me because I've been willing to respect you. But when you go there, I lose respect.
You should ask people what that even means before they even go on. But I think one of the most disgusting things Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the media have done was pushing the very fine people hoax for so long.
The
very fine people hoax. Trump, after Charlottesville, he did a press conference and they're like, he said there are people on both sides, you very fine people on both sides. I'm like, aha, he's saying the Nazis are good people. In the same press conference, not too long after, he said, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists
that's what
because I condemn them totally.
Yes.
And so, it was the evidence was always right there, but people, just listened to the first part and they ran with it. Joe Biden, when he made his campaign video, that's what he ran on. I had to get involved because Trump said this. He talked about it at the debate stage. Even though
what are they stirring?
They're sowing division, but it's not just personal against Trump. That's
emotion to me.
Yeah, it is emotion. But the thing about that though is, for people to think that he is that awful and that all these Americans know he's so awful, but still would vote for him anyway, it creates such a divide in the country that is so damaging.
Well, I've never heard Donald Trump say that he wouldn't accept Democrats when he was president. I've never heard Donald Trump call his opposition a basket of deplorables or garbage. And you know what? The Democratic Party has an agenda. And that agenda I learned about when I was at Michigan State in 1979. I had a class with a professor who worked in the Kennedy administration. His name was Walter B. Adams, and he taught free enterprise and public policy. And his model was, communism fails. And as communism fails, it breeds socialism. And as socialism fails, it breeds democracy. And as democracy fails, it breeds socialism. And as socialism fails, it breeds communism.
Yeah.
And what have we created? We've created a circle. And conceptually, it's my belief that the left has a goal of making America more socialist than it already is, and we're failing socialistically, and that will take us to the far, far left, which is communism, before people wake up and say, wait a minute, this isn't the utopia, this isn't the panacea. And that's why I say John Kennedy would be a Republican today. Bill Clinton would be a Republican today. They were not diabolical leaders. They had a different view of the role and the responsibility that government would play in the people's lives. But I don't believe that they were socialists or communists. I actually believe that Kamala Harris is a socialist in her belief of things, or even potentially a communist, because she thinks she's above being treated like everybody else. And she shows that with the way she interacts with people.
Well, I thought it was like when Obamacare was first being pitched and stuff, the assumption was that it was supposed to eventually fail and then lead to like universal health care. Like that's the assumption.
But the intent was to make universal health care.
That was the intent, but they wouldn't say that out loud. But by the time you had the 2020 election coming on and stuff, Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris were just kind of like, yeah, we want to get rid of private health care.
Well,
we just want to get rid of it. Yeah, sure. We got to eliminate it.
Of course. I don't mind. I just got my healthcare bill. Okay. And my premiums for my wife, myself, and my 2 children under Obamacare are $2,400 a month this year.
Mm.
And I have a $15,000 deductible. And I don't have the gold plan. Okay. And it is disgusting to me that because I can afford to pay for it, that's what it costs me for healthcare, while there are people who are getting the same healthcare for nothing. And Obamacare doesn't work. I don't know that I have a solution for what works.
The premium skyrocketed in 2016, right?
Absolutely.
Before the election. That's probably part of the reason why Trump ended up taking that victory.
Yeah.
Because that was I'm sure that was very inconvenient for the Democrats.
But the premiums never stopped skyrocketing. And, interestingly enough, in America.
But they talked about bringing back, Tim Walz talked about bringing back the mandate to, like, if you don't have health care.
Of course.
That you have to pay the fine.
Yeah, right. Like the government's going to take the time.
That's what originally what the pitch was. I was surprised when he brought it up.
Maybe that's what those IRS workers are going to do. They're going to go out and look for people who don't have health care.
I was surprised. I mean,
that's what they want.
You have to say it on your taxes or whatever, and if you don't have it, you pay the fine, and every year it was supposed to go up, and then Trump got rid of it. I was floored that he brought it up during the debate, and I'm floored that more people haven't talked about it.
Well, what's so interesting about that is, we have free health care in America. Mm-hmm. Because it's illegal for a hospital to turn down. Yeah, it's called standard of care. The federal government mandates it. It's how you get funds.
Now, people wanted you to be turned away if you didn't get the COVID shot, if you recall.
Exactly. But that's situational, and that was about control, and that was government
it was absolutely
as well.
About control.
So there's all sorts of contradictions, but I go back to, this is a push by the left and known socialists, in known communist-leaning people who think that form of government is better than a constitutional republic that functions as a democracy. Mm-hmm. And in my view, those people are losers, and those people are dangerous to our country. And of course, they may think that I'm dangerous to America because I'm willing to fight for what I believe in as well. But America is, it's okay to be in first place. It's okay to be.
It's okay to win.
The best. It's okay not only
to win wars,
but when you compete, to kick some ass.
Yeah.
It's okay. If you're going to keep score, it doesn't say stop scoring until the end of the game because you feel bad that you're beating the other team. Go ahead, let her rip. That's the American way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
They don't mind when men beat women in sports.
Well, yeah, a lot of them don't. It's okay to want better or more. And let's switch for a minute. I want to talk about Bobby Kennedy. And in the event that Donald Trump is elected, his role to make America healthy again. And you have the far left pushing feeding kids in public education. And I want to get your view on this, because I happen to think that it doesn't matter if you like what you are served. If you are hungry, you're going to eat it. And
I don't think it's true for kids.
Well, guess what? If they're not eating, I think it's true. I can tell you this, when I was a kid, I didn't like every dinner that my mom cooked. And I didn't have the option of not finishing my plate. That was just the way it was.
Yeah.
And there were times where when she wasn't looking, put something in my pocket or wrapped it up in a napkin and tried to get away with it. And she caught me every single time. Just drove me bananas. But the quality of food that we are forcing on kids in our public education systems is really bad under the guise of, well, we have to make stuff that they like. And what's your take? I'm okay. Again, I believe if you're hungry, you're going to eat it. And I'm not, a carrot isn't bad. A piece of broccoli isn't bad. The reason you don't like it is because you're not familiar with it in most instances.
I don't know. I don't like a carrot unless it tastes like a pot roast, but.
Well, you know what? But I get it. I mean, there are times where I prefer a Snickers bar, but that doesn't mean that serving them bad food or highly processed foods like they're serving these kids, it grosses me out, these little packets that have highly processed cheese and highly processed crackers and highly processed cold cuts. And we say, we're giving you a meal. You enjoy that. And I think that it creates health issues. I think it creates mental issues. And it's being proven out.
Well, I mean, I do think it's important for Americans to get their health in order. I mean, I'm going on a journey myself, and my dad is going on a journey. It's kind of a forceful one, but he just lost 30 pounds in the last month.
God bless him. I think it's great. My buddy just lost 60 pounds.
Yeah. So
he's not near as much fun to be with, by the way.
Yeah.
Because he did it by stopping drinking, and that was his deal.
Oh, we won't let him do fast food or anything like that, and so staying home, cooking meals, and so it's
it strengthens your family. It strengthens your bond.
Yeah,
I think there is nothing but good things.
I like to go around like the mall, and I'll be listening to gospel music, or sometimes I'm like even typing one of my books on my phone. My sister's like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just used to it, I guess." But It's interesting how different food companies and stuff will lobby different things, because once you get the government to pay for stuff, it legitimizes it in a way.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's one thing that like soda companies and stuff did. They wanted like SNAP and stuff to cover, the government to pay for that kind of stuff. So
of course,
there was different studies that they would fund to say like, hey, this is a good way to get calories for people who may have a deficit to drink, pop and other stuff like that. And then if you wanted it to not pay for that, they'd scream and like, oh, you're racist because you don't want to give the children these calories and whatnot. So eventually you get that to get paid for. And then it becomes legitimized because the government is paying for that stuff. So there's lots of, lobbying and bad actors that don't necessarily care about, the long-term benefits. Or if, a parent wants to let their kid drink pop or they want to do that, then that's something you can do on your own dime, but not something you want to lobby and get your own studies for. So, the taxpayer is, funding that
I've
stuff.
been lucky because I have been able to travel all over the world. And I go to places that a lot of people don't go to. I go to remote parts of Africa or Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan. I've been to Russia several times, and no, I'm not a Russian agent because I enjoy going to Russia and experiencing not necessarily Moscow or their form of government, but experiencing the natural resources that they have. What's fascinating to me is, and it is noticeable, you go to some of these other countries and weight is not an issue. And, their protein consumption, their fluids that they drink, it's water, it's tea. They don't have sugar issues like we have in America. They don't have processed foods like we have in America. And you know what else they don't have? The proliferation of diseases like we have in America. And it's noticeable when you come back into the States. We have so much that's so easy, but it's like being accountable to ourselves. We don't know what we're putting in our mouths. And I'd rather be at home, cook a meal with my wife that we know what we're cooking, we know what we're eating, have that conversation on preparation or this, that, and the other thing. Have the kids watch us and sit around. One of the greatest joys I had when I was a kid was cooking with my mom and learning that. And we were allowed to go out once a month and get a McDonald's, not once a week, not once a day. I'm not a big fan of, Starbucks.
You haven't had the chicken Big Mac?
I have not had the chicken McMac. Is it good?
It looks weird to me. I don't think I'm gonna try that.
You don't think you're gonna try that? I will say that strange. I have had a Chick-fil-A sandwich, and I thought those were pretty good.
Oh yeah, Chick-fil-A is great.
But as great as it is, I'm not going there. Yeah, I think that it'll be really interesting to see.
The only thing I guess
what Bobby would do, and Elon Musk on efficiency.
I'm very interested in what Elon's going to do with efficiency. I guess a concern, because Michelle was big on the school lunch thing, and it's funny if you go back on like Twitter and look at people's tweets, like showing their lunches and how they changed, how terrible they were after she started instituting things. There was one image, someone had their pizza and there was just like one pepperoni in the center. They're like, just one pepperoni. Thanks, Michelle Obama. But people will talk about how they weren't getting enough nutrition at that point. So, we want to make sure that they're eating good food for them, but athletes and stuff, that they're still, taken care of throughout the day. So I guess that would just be my concern, that they make sure that it's balanced. But the Elon and efficiency, that excited me. That was probably one of the really things that excited me. When Trump had him on and they were talking about that stuff.
Petrified.
It scared me, though.
Petrified the left, and it petrified
Elon
the bureaucrats.
Made a joke about how they were going to try to kill him. And I'm like, that was kind of my first thought when he started talking about really cutting government, because people do not like the bureaucracy to end. There's people in D.C. and who have been there. They outlast president after president.
Sure.
And if you appoint someone they don't like, they conspire and know how to get rid of them. So I just, if they really start cutting down.
Well, Trump admitted to that on Rogan.
Yeah.
He said, you know what? You have to have people with a level of experience that are familiar with the political process around you.
Yeah, well, he also talked about that because when you pick somebody outside of that world, people in government are vetted so much,
Right.
But I guess so they'll find a problem to get you pushed out of there. But people want their job security, and if you can push pencils and make a lot of money doing it, why would you want to do something else? So if someone wants to mess stuff around, now I don't know how much he's going to realistically be able to do without like the cooperation of Congress and all that stuff too, but it's exciting that someone wants to do something about it.
Well, I think that it is exciting, and at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of presidential directives. And we have a process, and unfortunately, we've got so out of whack that now the process may prevent us from fixing it as fast as we'd like to fix it.
Well, if Trump can't do something like, because he did a lot of great things, executive orders at the border and other stuff like that when he came in, and then Biden, they swiftly undid a lot of those things. But if they don't make some big like legislative changes, and a lot of things with the border is them just not enforcing the laws that are on the books. But he's going to have to have some kind of other legislative victories if you really want long-term change, because otherwise they'll just flip it back if it's just executive orders. Presidential
directives, like you say, don't have the staying power that we need. And the beauty is every 4 to 8 years we get to choose a new leader. But if they don't follow the process because they get frustrated with the process, the U.S. will go up, down, up, down, up, down. And it's really disruptive. And who knows, maybe government likes that if they can keep the people apart. Or some people in government like that. But lots of issues. We didn't get enough time, Christina, to talk about you, your writing, your church, your message. So I'm going to reserve another visit, another time to talk. And I want to thank you for being here today and sharing your opinions. on Beyond the Echo. It's important that people see that you can have a conversation. You can disagree. You can agree. You can talk about solutions. You can talk about the consequences of actions. And that's what Beyond the Echo is about. And I'm looking forward to learning more about you, getting to know you better. You are an exceptional, I'm going to say young woman, albeit you are 35.
Yeah.
You know, I am an exceptional old man, I guess, albeit 63. So I guess I can call you.
You know, that doesn't seem that old to me.
Yeah.
You know,
I laugh about it all the time. You know, people say, "How old are you?" Older than
you
dirt.
know, once we started hitting.
It seemed like yesterday I was 35.
Yeah,
by the
once
way.
we started hitting 30s and stuff, especially 33 or 34, whatever. My younger sister who's right under me would be like, "Oof, you older than Jesus," you know, because he died at 33. So, and they say that you're crispy is what they'll say. Oh, you crispy. So.
One last question before we go. It is Thursday today. And are you speaking at your church on Sunday?
I always like sing and speak. I'm not preaching this weekend or anything, but
because I was going to ask you, what's your message this week?
I'm not preaching this weekend. So
damn, I say.
For me, that's a weird way to respond about me not preaching, but I'm not sure. My brother will be preaching on Sunday, and I'm not sure who's preaching tomorrow, actually. But
well, I hope your brother preaches on unity this week. I hope your brother preaches on exercising your rights this week. I hope your brother preaches on being educated, and instead of trying to tear down, that we build up, because we've got a much stronger foundation than we think at times. And this coming week is going to be consequential to us.
It is going to be consequential, but again, not, the results we know by the time this airs, but there's so many things, even beyond politics, like, that I lost my mother recently, and the thing that...
God bless her, by the way, and God rest her. She was a beautiful lady. Met her once.
Yeah. But we rely so much on our faith to give us strength, and that's what really got us through, being able to worship and praise the Lord and pray together, and even through hard, difficult times. And even like in 2020, my dad, he got COVID, he almost passed away. He was too sick to vote. He went to the, hospital the day after the election. And so many people were like, stop this deal, all this stuff. And I was just, praying and for my dad to survive and stuff. So, and one thing, I know we're like closing, but preachers get like 5 closings, so bear with me. It's bothered me so much when people say, thoughts and prayers don't mean anything, or Gretchen Whitmer had said something on the debate stage, like mocked Tudor Dixon, like, they give you thoughts and prayers or whatever. And I'm like, don't disregard the power of prayer, because my dad, he's been all around the world preaching in different places, and when he was in the hospital alone, because we couldn't see him because those were the rules, we'd tell him over the phone, like, Dad, there's people in Kenya praying for you, Nigeria, Mexico, Puerto Rico, like all these places you've been to, they're praying for you. And so that helped give him the strength to hold on and survive and get out of there. So
thoughts and prayers are powerful.
They're
There's
very
value.
powerful.
And
there's such valuable power and community and people coming together and saying that we stand with you. There was so much kindness around me when my mother passed, and I was just so grateful. There was even a letter from the President Trump, an off of condolences. So we really appreciate that, and so
yeah, most people don't understand that Donald Trump would take the time to write Christina Barr and her family members a letter of condolence, because he's a real person too. We all put our pants on one leg at a time.
That's what Melania said after someone tried to kill him. She's like, this is my husband. He's a real human being.
Absolutely. And in today's world, when we talk about thoughts and prayers, people want to mandate how you think and how you pray, instead of accepting the fact that thoughts and prayers, however you think and however you pray, are valuable.
Yeah.
And that's why I go back to faith, family, and community. And whatever your family is, whatever your faith is, whatever your community is, when we unite and we recognize that we're all in this together and that we all want and deserve better, that we can achieve that by uniting.
Yeah.
Whatever the status of your faith is, whatever the status of your family is, whatever the status of your community is, when we come together, we can do great things.
And we share some, like you said, similar values. We may have different policy prescriptions on how we achieve certain goals, but those are the things that we debate. Like all this really deep personal stuff, like assuming people's, I don't know, motivations, or just have a conversation and understand people before you get into that kind of deep stuff. People don't want to understand each other, but we do share so many things in common.
Well, it's interesting because the definition of a conversation doesn't mean that somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong. It's an opportunity to learn different views and to process that.
Yeah.
And in America, we can still be who we are without being right or without being wrong. And we grow by considering input from others and modifying at times or strengthening at times our position. So all good stuff. Christina, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it. I'm going to look forward to the next time. And it'll be interesting to discuss the results from next week.
Yeah.
Which actually this show will drop after next week. So we'll have a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, anybody could go follow me on Black Tea News, blacktnews.com, black like the color tea, like the drink. And I talk about these issues, every day, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And
tell the audience how many followers you have on X.
On TikTok, I have about 80,000 on YouTube, and I have about 130 on TikTok.
130,000.
Yeah, not just 130,000 on TikTok. And it took a while to get there because man, they really started suppressing me during like COVID and stuff. But I'm very appreciative of my followers, and they're the best. And I'm honored that people take the time to listen. There's so many people in the podcast space, so I value anyone who takes the time to hear my perspective. And I think I have a more nuanced take on a lot of issues than some of my counterparts, though I have obviously very strong convictions. And if you want to learn more about, like, I write a lot of books. I have over 30 that's written, 18 that's published right now. 2 are nonfiction and the rest are fiction. I write children's books all the way to like adult. So
well, that's part of how I met you. Was in a political sphere. And what intrigued me and why I wanted you on the show is, and what there is so much more to talk about, is your writing and really your commitment to society and participating in the game. You're in the arena, and that's cool stuff. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Echo. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss an update. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop us a comment and share the podcast with your friends. Stay connected and keep the conversation going by following us on social media. Until next time, keep exploring beyond the echo.